Siskel and Ebert review Phoebe Cates and Bridget Fonda on a swinging 60s weekend in Shag. Weird Al Yankovic brings his TV parodies to the movie UHF. And John Travolta teaches Russian spies how to be cool in The Experts, now on home video. It's all coming up next on Siskel and Ebert.
Weird Al Yankovic makes fun of movies and low-budget TV in the comedy UHF. It's one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, along with a virtually hidden John Travolta movie that's now on home video. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is named UHF, and it stars Weird Al Yankovic, a comedian who's been successful for the last 10 years with his parodies of hit songs and music videos. Unfortunately, he is not as successful with the challenge of a full-length movie, and UHF adopts the shotgun approach to movie comedy, Yankovic firing everything and hoping that something will hit the target. The plot is basically just a clothesline to hang the gags on. After Yankovic's uncle wins an obscure TV station in a poker game, Yankovic is hired to reprogram the station, and after dismal ratings, he offers the janitor his own show.
Okay, kids, where you want to go?
The show is a hit, but the station needs other new ideas like this one for a new game format.
Tell me what you think.
Today, one of these lucky contestants will win his or her weight in fish right here on Wheel of Fish.
Yankovic's specialty is the parody, and here he takes on the famous opening of the first Indiana Jones movie. This movie seems literally willing to try anything to get a laugh, which may explain this scene.
And not too many people know this, but the turtle is also nature's suction cup. Watch this. Did you see that? It sticks. Huh?
Sticking the turtle to the ceiling. One of the many problems with UHF is that Yankovic never makes a commitment to stick with his original story idea. The movie is sort of about how he wants to run his own TV station, but then it goes all over the map with parodies of movie ads and TV satires that don't fit into that story format. We never know what the underlying reality of this film is, and so maybe there could be a funny movie about running this obscure station, but we find out here that UHF is not it.
Well, the show that was so great at parodying fringe television was SCTV, which week after week, year after year, came up with extremely funny material. And this film, how many jokes do you think he attempts? Maybe 200 or something like that in the course of the movie?
I wasn't counting.
Well, how many laughs? That was easy to count.
None.
None. Not one for me.
No,
and I think, well, you know, there's a thing when movies start show signs that are supposed to be funny, that's when they really get desperate. And this picture does that a number of times. I didn't laugh at a single thing. I was flabbergasted.
Well, the movie violates one of my little laws, the first law of funny names, which is that any movie that uses funny names in an attempt to get a laugh is probably in desperation.
You mean like Weird Al Yankovic?
I think that's his real name.
Yeah, Weird was his given name, right. Next film, it's called Valentino Returns, which is the name a young man in the 50s gives to his most prized possession, a brand new 1958 pink Cadillac. Valentino Returns is an oddball romantic comedy about a small-town 50s lifestyle. Unfortunately, the film has no laughs and few credible characters. Here we meet the young man and his love interest at a party.
What's your name?
Wayne, what's yours?
Sylvia?
Are you Sylvia?
What do you mean? What? Does everybody know my name or something?
Oh, no, no.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway, because I'm going to change it when I get older.
Why? What's wrong with Sylvia?
When I was little, all the other kids used to call me Saliva.
We also meet the young man's estranged parents, played by Veronica Cartwright and Frederick Forrest.
Baby, we're stuck together. You can't leave me. Go away. No, please don't leave me. I can eat, I can sleep.
We're in the ladies' room.
The father is eventually forced to bail his son out of trouble after the kid and a friend are busted for soliciting a prostitute.
Haven't you ever heard of VD?
Come on, Dad.
I thought you saw that picture show Mom and Dad. What the hell they teaching in high school anyway?
Nothing funny or particularly nostalgic for me there. This movie seems to think that just by mentioning the title of a 50s sex film there, that's funny all by itself, or that by loading the soundtrack with classic rock and roll of the period, that automatically is nostalgic. Not so. The songs are in our culture now, and everything from re-recordings to current TV commercials. So just playing one of those songs doesn't make the film more interesting. In fact, the songs are so good that when you're watching the picture, you think, oh, I'd rather just turn off the visuals and listen to the soundtrack. How bad is Valentino Returns? Well, Frederick Forrest is a fine, fine actor, but he's utterly lost with his insipid character of the father, just one of many phony characters in Valentino Returns.
That's funny, because I like this movie a great deal more than you did, and I liked it for a couple of reasons that I don't think you even reacted to. One of them is most of the 50s movies do steep themselves in nostalgia, as if that were some kind of a sunbathed golden period of the past when everybody was happy and lives were simpler. This movie shows that the 50s, like any decade for the people who lived at that time, had all kinds of problems, were kind of grim, were kind of depressing, did not turn out necessarily right for everybody. Another thing that I like about the movie is the way that it shows with almost inexorable logic how, for a young kid like the hero of this film, when things start to go wrong, they keep going wrong. For example, things keep going wrong with that Cadillac, among other things. Well, it seemed to me that this movie was a fresh approach to the 50s, almost like a revisionist approach, as opposed to this golden age that the movies
Well, I think the film uses a lot of symbols of the 50s. I mean, the Cadillac, for one, I couldn't believe he actually could afford to buy it or did buy the darn thing. All the music is very, you know, to me, there wasn't a moment that I thought was real in any way. I know the syndrome that you're talking about, which of course is when you're young and you do have a problem, everything seems to fall apart. But that sounds right, but not the way it's played here. I just didn't buy it a single thing. You bought the Frederick Forrest character. Didn't you think that there was somebody wanted to shake the characters and say, wake up or something?
No, I liked the fact that they were kind of befuddled and that they were kind of confused and that they were kind of ordinary people in that way. The funny thing is, we have coming up next on the show, a movie from the early 60s, which is kind of more or less the same period, sort of from between Rebel Without a Cause and the Kennedy assassination. All seems to be that period that the movies zero in on. The movie is called Shag. It's set in 1963 as 4 teenage girls discover themselves during their last fling before college, and that's coming up next.
Oh, I forgot. It was Sun Bump Festival this weekend.
The movie is named Shag, and it tells the story of 4 teenage girls on the brink of adulthood who sneak away from their middle-class homes in Spartanburg, South Carolina, to spend a weekend of fun at Myrtle Beach, which I guess is the South Carolina equivalent of Fort Lauderdale. It's where the boys are and the beer in a big shag dance contest, and it looks like fun to the girls, who are played here by Annabeth Gish, Phoebe Cates, Bridget Fonda, and Paige Hanna.
Hi. Hi. Where y'all from?
None of your beeswax. None of your beeswax? That's so queer.
At first, the weekend looks like a series of typical boy-girl flirtations.
Cool, here comes somebody. Pudge, if he asks you to dance, the first time say no. Don't want him thinking you're desperate.
Would any of y'all like to dance?
No, thank you. I'd love to. No, wait now. The exception proves the rule.
But the weekend isn't all lightweight, and Phoebe Cates, who's engaged to a tobacco tycoon, falls in love with Robert Rustler as the local nonconformist.
Bevo?
I don't drink in the middle of the day.
Well, you sure have a lot of rules for yourself, don't you, Carson?
Would you kindly put your shirt back on?
No.
Another weekend romance develops between Scott Coffey and Annabeth Gish, who didn't believe she was attractive until he convinced her otherwise.
I'm gonna be a Marine. Anyway, I was telling Buzz that, well, I was really hoping that I'd fall in love with a girl that somewhere souls I'd have someone to write to.
Oh, Chip.
The presence of Annabeth Gish in that scene is a reminder of a movie from last year that she was in named Mystic Pizza, which has a lot in common with Shag. Both movies are about high school girlfriends facing the challenge of adulthood. Mystic Pizza was the better film, but Shag also has charm and sensitivity, and I like the way it recreated the year of 1963. This movie actually takes place at almost the same time as American Graffiti, and sometimes I wonder, as we were talking earlier, about why so many recent teenage films are set in the 50s and early 60s. Maybe it's because being a teenager in those years was more fun, even if it didn't always seem like it at the time.
Well, I think the other explanation is pretty obvious, which is that's when the filmmakers themselves and the writers of the film generation were teenagers themselves and growing up, so that's naturally what they write about, that's what they recall. I think Mystic Pizza was the far, far better film. The four actresses are quite good here. I think they're better than the material that they're given. I wish that they had been given some more interesting things to do. As soon as I see the girl who is engaged to the you know, society guy, I know that relationship's going to break apart.
Yeah.
I would just like to see these people taken on a different trip into a different thing.
Well, but it breaks apart, but yet it breaks apart in a new way. The guy played by Tyrone Power, and he falls in love with one of the other four girls, the one who thinks that she's plain. You know, when we get the big, gee, when you take off your glasses, you're really beautiful. I always love that scene. I like some of the other supporting performances here. Scott Coffey, Robert Russler, those two young kids that they meet, are both very well-developed and well-written characters.
Wouldn't you rather see them play stronger material, either stronger, funnier, or stronger, serious? I mean, don't you know it's a little juvenile? I mean, generally.
It is a little juvenile, but you know what I got in touch with when I was watching this movie, because I lived through this almost exact period, you know, while you were still in...
That's not true. I was 17.
You were in the sandbox at the time, digging away, making your little castles.
You were over
and
20.
I was about... well, let me think. 43, 53. I was about 20, yes.
Thank you.
Which is about old enough to appreciate this period, as opposed to you were too callow and immature.
Yeah, nice vamping. I was a teenager.
That basically, this is what it was like. It wasn't a lot deeper than this, was it? For you, you sat around discussing
yes, it was.
Schopenhauer all the time with your dates?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't read Schopenhauer. But we had nothing to talk about. Coming up next, the latest John Travolta movie called The Experts. It was barely released in movie theaters. Now it's on home video. Is the picture that bad? We'll take a look. Travolta was as hot a movie star as you can name. He had a hit TV show, Welcome Back, Kotter, and his first two starring movie roles were in Saturday Night Fever and in Grease, which would become the two best-selling musicals of all time. Additionally, Travolta received an Academy Award nomination for his lead performance in The Great Saturday Night Fever. 10 years later, though, just last year, he made a film called The Experts, which the same studio that made Saturday Night Fever and Grease, Paramount, had so little confidence in it that it received minimal release in regional movie theaters and only now is being released on home video. Is it that bad? In a word, yes. The Experts has Travolta playing one of two Americans who become involved with a Russian espionage experiment. The Russians have built in their country a model of small-town America in which they can train their spies. The only problem is that the Russians are a little behind in the times. They've copied a 50s American town, and when Travolta and his buddy, played by Ari Gross, arrive in the town, they think they've entered a time warp, which they want to make more contemporary.
What do you people do for action in this town?
Well, gonna paint the back porch this weekend.
Oh, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But when Travolta and his buddy are hired to update the Russians' pleasant 50s world, they realize that they haven't made an improvement.
Unified remote, 1-year 4-event timer, random access tuning.
Cool.
God, I've always wanted one of these.
No, I don't need you anymore. I can play this myself.
Well, go ahead and play with yourself. Who cares?
When the Russian spies are brought to America, Travolta and his pal are determined to find them a quaint home.
Well, Travis, what do you think?
I don't know.
Hey, kid!
Yeah!
Keep it!
Thanks!
We're here.
It's hard to believe that anyone thought that this material qualifies as a movie. I don't think it qualifies as a made-for-TV movie. And just as surprising is Travolta's character. He's playing a young kid, a character that could have come directly out of Welcome Back, Kotter. And the result is that his previous film career, including such other fine pictures as Brian De Palma's Blowout and James Bridges' Urban Cowboy, they seem to exist in a time warp of their own. The Experts is a very, very weak movie.
Well, I was shocked when I saw this film, and I was shocked for the same reason you were. Not because of Travolta's work, because Travolta, after all, I think is essentially a good actor if he has good material, but because anyone wanted to make this screenplay into a movie. The notion that the Russians could somehow recreate a vintage 50s town and think that it was current America is so unbelievable that it undermines everything in the film. Do you have any idea how tough it is to get brand new 1957 Chevrolets and Fords and Studebakers and put them in a set like that? I don't think that a Hollywood set department could make it. Well, obviously, a Hollywood set department did make this town, but in Russia, this wouldn't happen like this, and nobody in Russia would think it should happen like this. So what we're up against here is the idiot plot syndrome, in which everybody in the movie, everyone has to be a complete idiot in order for the plot to survive.
Let's say that they made something more contemporary. Even then, it would be a stupid idea. I mean, I don't think the thing just hangs on that one little flaw that you found. I don't know what the joke is here. I don't know what the drama is here. I don't know where the characters are. I don't understand what anybody's doing.
I don't either. I was completely baffled. I was sitting there saying this movie was made by people who must have been hypnotized into thinking that they had a movie on their hands. As for Travolta, it's a tragedy in his career that he makes a big film like this and it's not even released in theaters. But watching his work here, all I could think of was, here's an actor who's in the wrong role, in the wrong movie, with the wrong script and the wrong dialogue. I think that it's unfortunate that it's singled out as a Travolta flop when actually everybody else failed before he even got to the movie.
When we come back, we'll look at a new video that features the early days of Porky Pig and Daffy Duck, and a salute to the late Mel Blanc, who did all of their talking for them.
I gotta catch that kid.
Laser discs in the stores right now that feature 32 of the adventures of Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, Bugs Bunny, and Elmer Fudd. And these collections are a little different from a lot of the cartoon anthologies on the market because they reach way back into the 1930s and 40s for some of their selections, providing us with a view of a long ago historic period when Porky Pig was thinner, Elmer Fudd was just learning to hunt, and Daffy Duck hadn't started to sound like Daffy Duck. Cartoons were more inventive in those early years, and here's an example of the way they stretched reality as a restless audience member distracts attention from the story on the screen.
Sit down. Sit down.
Here's an early look at Porky Pig before he had taken shape as the cartoon character we know and love today.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
And listen to Daffy Duck in this scene. He sounds almost like any other cartoon duck.
Say, fella, do you need a good duck actor? Woohoo!
No!
Here's the same duck after undergoing some changes from the great Mel Blanc, who not only recorded the voices for hundreds of cartoon animals, but created the famous way many of them sounded.
That's no way to light a fire. Here, rub these two sticks together like a really and truly woodsman.
The thing that always amazes me in listening to these cartoons is the realization that almost all of those voices, in some cases every single voice, is being done by the same man, Mel Blanc. And how he did that, I don't know, and he did it for a long time.
Well, you know, he died just a couple of weeks ago, and so now I think we're much more sensitive. As I was watching the set, I watched the Bugs and Elmer series, and as I was paying particular attention to the voice, and I could not see or hear, actually, how he could stretch his vocal cords that way.
What we have here, the Bugs and Elmer stuff, each one of these characters has a video cassette of his own, and then they have laser discs combining two and two, 16 on each laser disc. So you can go back and get a little bit of a historical look. On the ones that I was looking at, you go back to the cartoons of the 30s, and what you realize is at that time they were not making cartoons just for kids. They were making cartoons that were sophisticated and witty and inventive, and they were for everybody in the audience. And I wish we still had cartoons, and I wish that cartoons were not so stupid and simple-minded as they've grown in recent years.
I think the popularity of the Roger Rabbit film and the Tummy Trouble Little Short is that they are more contemporary and more adult. Because when I was looking at the old Bugs Bunny cartoons from the 40s, I saw things that were, well, they had a pin-up in the background of one shot of a naked woman. It was great to just to see that they had army expressions from the time during the war. There's one great sequence where Bugs is underwater and playing a mermaid to a dog that's underwater that's trying to get Bugs. It's absolutely wonderful. And these are, you know, This is adult, lively stuff.
Well,
why should they be dumber just because they're cartoons?
When you look at this stuff, you realize that it took hours and hours, weeks and months of animation to do cartoons, and that's why eventually they stopped making them.
Right.
It was too much work. Now with computers, they can do a lot of the drudgery inside the computer so that it's possible to make cartoons again at an economic price. Let's do it. Let's have a cartoon before the movies.
Well, the other thing is the writing, though, costs the same. And I think what we're really saying is that these things were well written and bright and adult and not just kiddie fair.
Well, then re-release them.
I wouldn't mind that. I enjoyed these series that we got to look at. Now let's recap the new movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down for the stunningly unfunny TV and movie parody UHF featuring Weird Al Yankovic. A widely split vote on the 50s domestic comedy drama Valentino Returns. Roger enjoyed the ambience. I thought the characters were lame. And a split vote on Shag, 4 teenage girls coming of age in the 60s. We both agreed that the performances were good, but I found the material to be trite, whereas Roger was engaged. So of all of these pictures, including the Travolta release on tape, I end up liking the cartoons by far the best.
You know, I think it's unfair, though. Once again, we say the Travolta release.
I know, because of his stardom. You're
somebody directed
right.
it, somebody wrote it, and
You're
it's
right.
Travolta who hangs out. It's always the actor that gets blamed for these things.
Not always, but I mean, I think that they also get, probably they get a proportionate amount of praise. Similarly, I think you're right, though. He shouldn't be blamed. It's just that I think a lot of people, I know I, for one, you know, really like this guy in 4 of his pictures, and you want to see him do good work. So I'm rooting for him. It's just that it's more my disappointment.
Okay, that's it for this week. Next week, a special edition of Siskel and Ebert that we're calling Hidden Horror. Gene and I both select overlooked horror films that we think deserve a wider audience on home video. And that's next week. Until then, the balcony is closed.
Raisinets and Goobers are playing everywhere, starring plump, juicy raisins and great golden peanuts. Both now feature creamy Nestle milk chocolate. Shout. Nothing cleans better than a squeeze of Lemon Power Shout. Want tough stains out? Squeeze Lemon Power Shout. Tap-in SureCook Space Saver Microwave is perfect for kitchens where space is at a premium. Tap-in Touch controls an automatic temperature probe, furnished by Tap-in. Travel Savers, the nation's leading chain of independent travel agencies. Consult your yellow pages for the Travel Savers agency nearest you. Ask for our specially priced cruises. Travel Savers.